Join me in this video for a stormy passage to the island of Barra and some explanation of what goes into me preparing for that sort of passage, together with a bit of a wait in Derry/Londonderry for medical parts after my catheter disaster in last video. Then explore the remote Hebridean Island of Barra with me and my wheelchair. I'm still in Londonderry. The medical parts that I'm waiting for are taking slightly longer to arrive than expected, in part because the catheter that the hospital put in turns out not to be one that can be prescribed in primary care. There are literally hundreds of things which I could be doing which are more productive than this, but I'm still here and it's a Saturday, so I thought I'd take the trike round to Riverside Park, to a park, St Columba's Park, or St Columba's Park, which is, I think, just over there. So we'll go over the Peace Bridge and round down that road to the river. St Columba's Park is a genuinely delightful piece of urban woodland. It's beautifully kept, named for St Columba, the missionary monk, rather than for Coulomb, the noted physicist and inventor of the unit of charge. It's a vast area with streams and birds flying everywhere, carrying materials for nest building, and every tree is just bursting out in new life. DPD tell me that the catheters that I'm waiting for, which will allow me to clear out of Derry/Londonderry, are arriving about lunchtime, and I'm staring at the weather because there is a very exciting opportunity looking ahead of me, and that is that the wind's going to blow southeasterly for about 24 hours as a low moves in across the north of Ireland, and obviously that would take me beautifully up to Castle Bay and Barra. However, that passage would take 32 hours ish, although with the southwesterly we might do it in 24 because I'm planning on a speed of 4, and on that course I should be making something more like 6. And the problem with this is that it's just incredibly seductive, because instead of spending 32 hours going to Castle Bay, which I don't really need to go to, I could spend about 3 days going offshore west round St Kilda and then into East Loch Rogue, which would be a stunning passage, and it's incredibly seductive. It would also be the longest passage I've made this year, and so I'm just trying to work out whether I can psych myself up to do it and whether it's a good idea. If I am going to do it, then I need to clear out of here at about midnight and then run north with the southeasterly and see where we end up. So it's a really tricky one because I know what I want to do, I just want to get round. So in these passage plans you're balancing weather information and track information and a whole lot of other stuff which you're trying to meld into a coherent whole. And when it works, it's gorgeous, and when it doesn't, it just doesn't somehow gel together, and that's usually a sign that it's not really working, it's not going to work, and that you shouldn't do it. So the problem with this one is that it is gelling and it does look like it would work, and the only question is whether it's a sensible thing for me to do in my current condition. On the basis that I might be clearing out of here at midnight, I'm going to prepare some food so that I have some munchies for the passage, or for the excursion northward. Let's just call it an excursion for now, and we'll work out where we're actually going later. It's very unlike me to do it this way, but we'll just roll with it, shall we? I know the boat's good for it, it's just a matter of me getting back into the rhythm of life on the boat. So I'm chopping up some onions and going to chuck some stuff together and make some sort of slodge that will keep me fueled out there, and ideally will stop me having to actually cook too much until I'm well offshore and where there's nothing around that would be a problem.
Boat food mostly looks like this to me. Trelane doesn't have a fridge, so root veg and pulses are quite the easiest thing, and I find I can make some really tasty meals. They also happen to agree with my gut and make the care that I have to do as a consequence of spinal injury much easier and quicker. The passage to come to Barra is one where that care not going as well as it might have results in me having a less than stellar experience.
Foil Port Radio, this is Sailing Trelane, over. Foil Harbour Radio, this is Trelane. Intentions are to depart Derry for the estuary shortly. Is that acceptable, over?
Yes, just come ahead. Come ahead. The river is cleared, so you're okay to go ahead.
Good morning. We have cleared the River Foyle and we are out of the estuary, and the wind is doing pretty much what was forecast, which is to build from 10 knots and begin to rise from now. So we are now sailing, which is fantastic, and I'm just negotiating my way around the bulk carrier resource, which I think is heading its way into the Foyle anchorage, presumably to go up to Lishaley and unload whatever's on board, because it's very much not in ballast. The weather is pretty grey actually, and it's going to get worse all morning. Certainly it's going to get worse, and probably all day. And so I'm just watching rather worriedly to windward, trying to gauge when the front's going to hit, because I'll suddenly go from having full sail up to being deeply reefed down, and we're just trying to push at the moment so that we maintain full knots, and the ship is therefore on track for reaching Barra in about 32 to 38 hours. It's a bit on the miserable side outside. The rain's coming on, and the cloud base is lowering and lowering and lowering, which is typical because we're awaiting the passage of a front. There's gannets flying all round the boat, and the good news is that we have literally just crossed my track from 2022 when I came around the north of Ireland and into Islay. So we are now sailing around Britain and Ireland again, having had the sort of disaster of a year where we were waiting for a new mast and dealing with boatyards and all the rest of it. So that's great. It would be lovely if it was a bright blue day, and but it's not. However, the wind's too good to throw away, so we're making progress, and we're now about 40 miles from Skerryville, which is a clump of rocks that lies off the tail of Tiree, and that's our kind of mid-course waypoint on this passage. So we are about probably 10 hours from there, and then maybe another 7 or 10 hours to Barra. As we got out into the Hebridean Sea, crossing the approaches to the North Channel, the sea really kicked up, and Trelane was staggering along, smashing through the increasingly disordered waves. The boat was completely safe and wasn't giving me any cause for concern. Me, however, not so much. I said earlier in this video that sometimes if my bowel care isn't done right, I can get seasick very easily. This sea and the following 15 or so hours definitely qualified. Fortunately, I've never got completely prostrated by motion sickness. Rather, I tend to vomit and then carry on. The problem becomes staying hydrated with enough carbs on board so as not to fall over. There's an uncomfortable thing of having to maintain that eating and drinking discipline even when I really don't want to. In these conditions, I focus on the ship's sail trim and balance, my welfare and the navigation. Filming and making content has to vanish from the priority list. I hope you understand. As a disabled sailor, in this wave pattern at worst, I'm literally crawling around the boat. If I'm not on my back, my knees or my backside, I'm not very interested in moving around. I've seen too many people
fully able people get into trouble through overreach that I'm not fussed, provided the ship is in safe water and there's a recent fix, all is good. The day was deeply dirty, and somewhere south of Skerryvore, the lighthouse at the south end of Tiree, a flat island between Mull and Barra, I was joined by an exhausted pipit. I couldn't decide if it was a rock pipit or a meadow pipit, but whichever it was, it definitely shouldn't have been right there in the teeth of the bottom end of a Force 7. Throughout all this passage, including my sickness and general low condition, the hydrovane kept Traleen on course with amazing accuracy. These servo pendulum wind vane systems operate an independent rudder and are such a blessing for a power-constrained boat like Traleen. And the knowledge that the vane works better and better as the wind strengthens is a great comfort. I've mentioned before that this vane is older than Traleen's hull, but thanks to my shipwright's reconditioning during Traleen's refit in Cowes, continues to give great service. By all accounts, the new models from Hydrovane are even better. As night began to fall, the loom of Barra Head Light was a comforting source of orientation, and the off-lying islands of Mingulay and Pabay began to gain definition. As Traleen crossed the line between Barra Head and pretty much Skerryvore, we passed into the Minches, the inner seas between the outer and inner Hebrides, which of themselves have an entirely justified reputation for being stormy and unwelcoming, unlike the islands and communities which line their shores. Sailing at night in a small boat, it's really easy to get disorientated, especially when there are no stars, scene lighting or lighthouses visible. Indeed, that particular problem was going to come to bite Future Ian in just a few hours. I try hard to make sure that as dusk comes down, I've got the courses tabbed into my brain and any visual references firmly established. Barra Head is a great lighthouse at a distance, with a lantern of over 700 feet above mean sea level. The downside is that it can vanish into low cloud, which is unwelcome. The plan for this passage had been a passage speed of 4 to 4.5 knots. Traleen had actually been achieving 5 to 7 over the ground. The consequence was that instead of approaching the harbour in the rising dawn, we were now charging up to the approach in the brief period of full dark and during the time of night when humans are at their least responsive. Thanks to the fantastic lights from the Northern Lighthouse Board, I made a safe approach before ending up in a bit of a tangle looking for a place to drop the hook. It turned out I was in the middle of an evil nest of workboat moorings. To be clear, workboats and fishing boats always have priority for me, but I hadn't realised from reading the pilot or guide just how dense the mooring field had become. Fortunately, I was able to extract Traleen and bring her to a single anchor in the wide roadstead of the main harbour. Less sheltered, but less dangerous too. Having moved into Barra Marina, which is run by Buvarag, the local community organisation which provides visitor services, hot desks, laundry, has an amazing shop and are generally the most awesome people, I settled the boat down for a bit of maintenance and started looking for a window to get round St Kilda. This is another great local marina where the money generated stays in the local community. I love that principle of recirculation because it's a positive contribution to the island here, rather than the money being spirited away to head office for purposes unknown. Castle Bay is the main settlement on Barra with a population of about 1,700 people. The village is very clearly a community and also a place which welcomes a lot of visitors. As with most of the outer islands, everyone seems to work at least 3, sometimes 4 jobs. It's not that they're all particularly hard charging, it's just that a lot of the roles come with limited hours because, well, there isn't so much work in small islands, but all the roles required have to be there, from paramedics to nurses to recycling and refuse, staff for the hotels and ferry and so on, otherwise the community doesn't remain viable. Good afternoon from Sailing Traleen. I'm here on the island of Barra, the southernmost of the Outer Hebrides. To the west of here there is nothing until St John's, Canada. And I'm just going to take the wheelchair and some camera equipment on a little mission over the hill towards Tangersdale and the west side of the island, and there hopefully to spend some time in the machair, which is a unique ecology which should just be coming into flower as I get there. So I'm here on the start of the machair
on the west coast of Barra. This is an ecosystem found only here in the westernmost islands of Scotland, formed from eons, literally eons, of lime-rich shellfish remains blown inland by the westerly wind into the sand, fertilising it. It gives rise to a soft grass, and at the right time, which this apparently is not quite yet, a rich carpet of wildflowers. It's maintained only through extremely gentle grazing. I'm in a field which, in a fertile area of England, might have several hundred sheep in it, and it maybe has 20. The area is notoriously rich in birds, including the elusive corncrake. I heard one of the locals here at the marina announcing that they had heard a corncrake and rejoicing in the fact, because it's a very endangered bird these days. To my right, the Atlantic Ocean, with 2,800 miles of fetch, vast rolling swells crashing onto the beach, started on their journey in St John's, Canada. And to my left, the Minch, that turbulent inner sea of the Hebrides, and beyond that, the inner Hebrides and Scotland. These islands are quite literally on the edge, and they feel more connected with the Faroes and with Iceland than they do with the UK as a whole. You join me hanging out in Conraig Bay, just off the Vatersay Sound. I've come over here from Barra because Castle Bay itself is very open to the south and the southeast, and there's quite a lot of wind coming in that direction, which means that the marina gets uncomfortable to untenable. The other reason that I'm hanging out here is less creditable, and that is that a few days ago in the marina I was changing my splints, and I was just in my socks, and I managed to spill some boiling water on one of my feet. The foot's actually going to be all right, and it's just going to take a few more days to come right. But when you've got a neurological injury, a spinal injury, or diabetic feet or whatever, you can't mess around with skin problems. So I am once again being held for some medical problems, although in this case it is entirely of my own making, and I feel like a complete chump. The anchorage is a pool at its deepest between 8 to 10 metres. The pilot book actually suggests an anchorage slightly further upwind than we are at the moment. We're anchored this way because there's a pipeline running across the anchorage, and I'm always very nervous about sticking my pick through someone's water supply or electricity supply. I think in this case it's water supply, so I have elected to be in slightly deeper water. The anchorage is so far proven to be really excellent. The anchor's really well dug into a sand bottom. It's overlain with some kelp, but the kelp isn't too thick, and it's very obvious that the pick is all the way in. I'm probably going to stay here for another few days the back edge of this front is going to bring some more southeast winds, which again would be uncomfortable in Castle Bay, whereas out here it shouldn't be.